Hello, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. I'm Helena, and this is my cozy corner of YouTube, where I share how stationery brings joy and calm to my busy life as a full-time academic and mom to a very lively 3.5-year-old. January has been a month of new starts. We kicked off 2026 in style with a 5-day Disney cruise all around Sydney, Hobart, and Eden in what I'm pretty sure is going to become a core memory for my son. And he hasn't been able to stop talking about it since. It was a hot and languid summer on the Gold Coast, and I did my best to stay active even when I lost my ability to take daily walks around my neighborhood on the days where the heat was simply too intense. I nevertheless found peace and anchorage through my intentional self-care systems and practices. One of the ways in which I've been able to maintain strong mental health is with my journals. So today, I thought I'd sit down at my writing desk and share with you my life through the pages of my beloved books. So let me begin with my Hobonichi A6 Techo original. If you've been on my channel before, then you might know that this is the third year in which I'm keeping a daily journal for my son, all about the incredible memories and experiences that we make as a family. When I first discovered Hobonichi, I used this Spring Start 2023 journal to document our daily life from when he was around 7 months old through to the very first family vacation we took to Japan. I have been going strong with my toddler journal, but before I show you the pages, I'll explain that this is the Moomin cover for 2026, and it's one that I have absolutely loved, and it can't help but make me smile every time I see this book on the corner of my writing desk. The pockets of my inside covers aren't quite full yet, but I keep the artist card for the cover, the Hobonichi information and care pamphlet, a little washi sample that I received from Alison of Little Coco Studio here in this front pocket. I just realized that I had this little packet inside, which is honestly never a bad idea given how humid the Gold Coast is. I have here a little Moomin envelope, but I haven't decided what to do with it yet, so it's currently empty, but I thought it was the perfect envelope for a little treasure. And then I have a washi sampler from Michael of Michael in the Margins. It's always so helpful to have a little washi sample set here in my book itself, because I rarely am able to, say, take an entire bulky washi tape with me when I'm out and about. But it's so common for me to receive a piece of ephemera or grab a business card from somewhere fun that we went to, or even just print off a Instax photo. I really love the opportunity to be able to tip it in with a washi tape strip. I have some very appropriate tiny tiger stickers here from the washi tape shop. And you'll see the washi tape shop is a very common feature among these pages. I love these cute little squirrels. The pen that I'm using within these pages is my Sailor Proteus Slim from the ama-oto line. So this was a special line that Sailor produced where instead of the usual 14 karat gold nibs, this line was created with a 21 karat gold nib in both white and yellow gold. I received this particular colorway, which is the tou or winter rain color, from my partner and my son for Mother's Day a couple of years ago. So I thought it was a symbolically resonant pen to use in this book. And I have it inked up with herbin's larmes de cassis. This pinky purple ink has been unexpectedly such a beautiful complement to the inside navy lining of the movement cover. And I have to confess that for the last month, working in this journal has been such a joy, primarily because of this wonderful complement of colors between the pen, ink, and journal cover. So here on the yearly spreads, I've been doing mostly health tracking. And this is something that I started last year. Because I was already in an A6 techo in which I did health tracking, I didn't need to move into this spread in December, even though you get this bonus column in the Hobonichi book. So what I did was using my Canon Selfie QX20, which is a relatively new purchase I made at the end of 2025, I printed off some sticker photos of these epic trips we took all around Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and ACT throughout the month of December. So I've popped these lovely little memories here of us with our son. That's us in front of the Big Sheep. This was us at a pit stop having a surprisingly delicious brunch. Here's us in Melbourne, in Burke Street Mall, if anybody is familiar with the famous Christmas displays that Burke Street Mall has put on for decades. And here's us at our favourite cafe in Canberra, having our morning coffees and baby chinos. So what I do with the health tracker is that I have designated a column for me just to mark with my pen whenever my son is sick. If the illness is serious enough that we have to keep him home, not just like a little bit of the sniffles, but if it's something where he's banned from going to daycare for good reason, such as if he has a fever, if he's vomiting, then we keep him home and I'll make a note of that. Then I have a column for if I get sick and a column if my husband gets sick. So you can see here that my son had a really minor issue right after we got back from our cruise, actually, in which he complained of tummy aches and he looked very lethargic that morning. So I was a little bit worried and we decided to keep him home from daycare. But then he made a complete recovery after about an hour and we ended up having a fun day at home together. On this day, he had 2 days where he was just a little bit sniffly and he had no other symptoms and no reason to keep him home. Plus, that was over on the weekend anyway. But on the second day of my son's illness, my husband caught whatever bug he had, but he had it so much worse with a persistent sore throat, eventually developing into coughing and a fever. So my husband was sick for 4 days after that. If it's serious enough that I need to take him to the doctor, or if he's going to the doctor for annual checkups, vaccinations, I will make a note of it in this column. And then only because I had all this space, I decided it would be very helpful for me to track whenever I change his bed sheets. So I do that in the last column here. And I've made the same headings across February, and I'm going to track this throughout the year. My son is in his third year of full time daycare now, but in the very first year, he started going to daycare. And I'm sure the parents out there can relate. He was our resident plague bearer, and he brought back an illness probably around twice a month. And at least half of those times, my husband and I would get very sick. In some cases, significantly sicker than he was. So he would bounce back as the resilient toddler that he is. And my husband and I would be knocking at death's door for 2 weeks. So I thought it would be really useful to track his illnesses and our infections throughout the year. Because sometimes, as grueling as the work of parenting is, you need little spreads and trackers like this to remind you how much easier, how much better things are getting month after month, year after year. And I feel really proud when I look back on my old journals and I see the sorts of things that I was struggling with or worrying about. And I realize how much more experienced and confident I am as a parent. So that's what I'm doing with the yearly spreads. I'm not doing anything special with the monthlies, but I do note down significant milestones, holidays, and events. But I confess it's not something where I do future planning in these pages. So it's not particularly vital for me that, I make sure I note down travel dates or events. That normally goes into a digital calendar. But I'd like to have this as a reference at the end of the year for when those big, memorable activities happened. So that brings me to our dailies. At the start of every spread, I write down what city in the world we are located. And if we're traveling that day, like we did on the 1st of January when we drove from Nambucca Heads to Sydney, I'll mark that down with a little arrow. It's not unusual for us to take regular day trips to Brisbane, for example. And I will note down if we spend a full day in some of the cities close by. We started January in such style. We were staying at a very cozy, folksy, traditional bed and breakfast in Nambucca Heads. In fact, the night before, we rang in the new year by purchasing a few sparklers from the local supermarket. And we went down to Nambucca River, a beautiful natural surrounds. We played in the playground next to the river. And once my son was satisfied with going down the slides and being pushed on the swings, we took our sparklers to the riverside and we lit them up and talked about our excitement for everything 2026 was about to bring. So come January the 1st, after that wonderful night, we, all three of us, had a really good night's rest. I think we were sleeping off the weariness of our very ambitious road trip. And we were brought breakfast in bed by the bed and breakfast owner. And we had this wonderful, nourishing breakfast of eggs, bacon, toast, French press coffee. It was such a special way to start our day with a bit of pampering. We drove through from Nambucca Heads to Sydney, and we were embraced by my in-laws and welcomed home. August has an aunt who is so sweet. She's my husband's cousin, and she's just connected so deeply with August that she asked my in-laws to let her know whenever August was visiting Sydney so she could make sure to spend some time with him. And indeed, she joined us for dinner, and my son was over the moon to see her. My son is so lucky to have his grandparents. They absolutely adore him, and they took him out for a fun day at the art gallery. My husband and I, who were still on leave from work, we got to have a really, really special full day date together, getting matcha lattes, having an incredible sushi lunch at one of our favorite restaurants in Sydney. My son was all tuckered out after having a wonderful day that he promptly fell asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. On January the 3rd, we embarked on our Disney cruise and everything played out like a dream. We were able to get on board about an hour earlier. We had an amazing lunch on board at a restaurant themed after the Princess and the Frog called Tiana's Place. We just met so many wonderful crew members and families on board, and the excitement was absolutely palpable. And then at sunset, to see our ship pull away from Sydney Harbour was one of the most breathtaking things I have experienced in my life. These next few days, if you've watched one of my earlier videos from the year, then you would know I found very little time to actually journal and update these books while I was on the cruise itself, because every hour was go, 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 rushing from character meets to live shows to restaurants and port adventures. My goodness, I had a lot of empty pages when I got back. But in the days since, I've been able to go back on my notes, my photographs on my phone, and update these pages. So on January the 8th, we sadly disembarked from our ship and we went back to my in laws, absolutely shattered from those fun filled, jam packed 5 days. We were cared for, we were nourished with beautiful home cooked meals, and it was exactly the couple of days we needed to recuperate our energies before making the very long drive back to the Gold Coast from Sydney. On the way home, the three of us actually stopped by a beautiful cafe called the Autumn Rooms in Newcastle. 4 years ago, my husband and I dined there, and at that time, having absolutely no inkling that our son would even enter our lives. And we just had a beautiful little vacation there, the two of us. And the autumn room stood out as one of the best meals we had while we were in Newcastle. And it was so nice to be able to take my son there and give him that experience. And of course, he loved the food. But when does my son ever not love eating? When we stayed overnight in Nambucca Heads again, we didn't go back to the bed and breakfast, but we chose to stay in an Airbnb. And it was one of those old school Airbnbs where the owner had poured a lot of heart into maintaining that property. And she had an incredibly generously stocked pantry. So it felt a little bit more like we were staying with a friend. But what really took the cake for this property was that it was right in front of a reserve. And at sunset, we saw kangaroos hopping through the reserve. So that one was quite a special place to be. We started settling back into our daily routine on the Gold Coast, and my son started preparing to move into the higher class at his daycare. And so there are lots of stories here where we have some frazzled nerves, big emotions, and even a couple of meltdowns. But we did our best to swaddle him in love over these days. And in the week since, he's been coming home every single day, telling us how much fun he's had at daycare, including some of the new friends he's made in his class. Actually, this was quite a special day here where my son celebrated his friend's birthday at a fun indoor play gym. The friend had a superheroes themed party, which is not uncommon for 3, 4-year-old boys at the moment in our community. And I asked my son, "Do you like superheroes?" And he said, "Nah, I like cute things." Over the last few months, the plug in our bathtub has somehow corroded or something. And whenever we plug our bathtub, we're not able to unplug it. So it gets stuck and we can't drain the water unless we get a butter knife from the kitchen and try to jimmy the plug so that it comes out. So we knew it really wasn't going to be much of a long term solution. Earlier in January, my husband ordered a replacement part for the bath plug. And to our delight, once we replaced that part, the tub and its plug are working perfectly now. So I showed my son that we had gotten this new plug, and he asked if we could have a bath that night. I remembered that I also had a couple of Lush bath bombs in the cupboard that we haven't been able to use because we haven't been able to take baths. So I let him pick one. His current favorite color is orange. And so there was this sparkling orange one. And when we dropped it into the water, it just made the most beautiful glittery swirls. He was so happy. He actually turns to me at the end of our bath and he's like, "Mummy, this bath was so much fun. It was so relaxing. Let's do it again." So I had to commemorate that particular day. It was so wonderful to have memories like that with him. His mood has been so good in the last week of January as he settled into his new daycare class and really just began eating, sleeping better. Every single one of these days have been absolute gifts, as is being able to come and update these pages with all the precious memories that I would love to hold on to and share with him when he's older. When I first began journaling for my son, I really didn't know where I was going to take these books. They were invaluable for me as a very overwhelmed mother struggling with postpartum anxiety and depression. And line by line, page by page, I was able to find some kind of grounding through the healing act of journaling. What has been so incredible to see over these last 3 years of daily journaling is that now my son knows that I journal for and about him. And he will ask me by pulling out my old books and saying, "Mummy, could you read a couple of entries for me?" And we will flip to random pages or events that we knew were memorable and important to us. And I would read him what I wrote on those days, and we would both marvel at some of the things that I've already forgotten after a year or two, and how different he was, and how different our struggles were during that time. And he really understands a lot about what I'm writing. So he'll ask, "Is that when I was a little baby? And what else did I do, Mummy?" And he is rapt whenever I share my entries from a couple years back. So I can only imagine how much fun it would be to revisit these entries with him in a couple of years' time when he's 5, when he's 10, and goodness knows when he's 25. Now, you may have noticed that on these pages, I have been featuring these cute little character stickers. And it's with a lot of nervousness and excitement that I share with you that over the last year, it's been an embarrassingly long time, I have been illustrating and designing a line of character stickers that I had longed to have when I was a new mother, journaling in my very first baby book. There are, of course, so many incredible planner stickers out there. While so many of them are based on such cute animals, there was a part of me as I was muddling my way through stressful, sleepless nights that I just so wanted some stickers that reminded me of my son. And while tigers have often been my go to when I haven't been able to find character stickers, it's been so exciting finally turning my illustrations into these clear matte stickers. So, the way that I've been decorating my pages is actually waiting until the end of the month, and then I'll flip back and revisit my entries. And some days they're so full, I barely have any space left on the page itself to put down a sticker. And then I'm happy to leave it undecorated. But there are times where there was a very sweet moment or a really special, fun day. And being able to put down a sticker, pull my attention almost like a mini bookmark or a page dart, so that when I'm flipping back through my pages, I'm able to quickly find the moments, the anecdotes, the reflections that I want to treasure. Inclusion is something that's quite important to me. And so it was always part of my plan, not just to make my son into the sole character, but to design a variety of characters. In fact, I created 12 characters in hopes that you would be able to see your children or yourself reflected back in those illustrations. In the coming weeks, I intend to carve out some time in my schedule and build a website and launch my very own Tiny Tiger Collective shop where you would be able to purchase these clear matte stickers for yourself. If you're interested in finding out when this sticker shop will be released, I will include a link to a newsletter in this video's description. If you submit your email address, you will be the first to find out as soon as my online shop is live. And if you are interested in supporting me in this way, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. If purchasing planner stickers is not on the cards for you, thank you as well for being here, watching my videos, and being a treasured part of my community. I cannot wait to continue documenting our beautiful life together in these pages. So now this brings me to my Hobonichi cousin for 2026. This is my Mina Pahonen Beautiful Symphony cover in yellow, which I purchased from the Tokyo Tobichi store back in 2024 when we went there for our family vacation. Inside these pockets, I have this very sweet Yumi Kitagishi white cat bookmark that was such a generous and considerate gift from Michael in the margins. I have not one, but two charms that I purchased from Asakusa Temple. I have these Iyo Okumi translucent post-it notes. And here in this larger side pocket, I also keep my stickers in an Iyo Okumi A6 folder. And I'll show you how I've been using these stickers once I get to my weekly spreads, if I can get these back. This is a small mini letter set from Daiso. And what I have inside is actually a note that has my email address and phone number in case this book is ever lost. Of course, it's not very functional right now because if you found this book, how would you ever know to open up what looks like a private sealed envelope? So I should write here in big bold text, if lost, please open. But at the moment, this book is almost always staying at home right here on my writing desk. So the chances of it getting lost out in the wild are quite slim. This is not the first Hobonichi cousin I've kept. I purchased a Hobonichi cousin for the first time in 2024 as a spring start. So I've had the experience of maintaining such a big A5 journal before. And this time I was slightly better prepared for not just how I could more effectively use the yearly, monthly, weekly, and daily spreads in ways that aligned with my personal needs, but I was also able to give myself a bit more grace than I did compared to the very first year that I kept this journal, knowing that I was going to have a bit of a learning curve in terms of getting used to building this in as a daily ritual and habit, while also strengthening the muscles in my hand to be able to keep up with filling out an entire page spread. Again, I've used the washi tape shop's beautiful stickers to decorate these pages. The Chinese mythology around the rabbit who lives in the moon was always one of my favorite childhood stories. And so this opening page was one that meant a lot to me to create this little spread. I've also used these translucent washi circles that I picked up from one of the 100 yen shops in Japan. And I found that this size is really functional for me to mark out the public holidays of my state. Last year, I kept quite an ambitious journal ecosystem where I maintained 4 planners, including this Hobonichi Weeks with a Yumi Kitagishi beautiful wallpaper cover, in which I followed Little Coco Studio's system for tracking my health and wellness. After a year of using this health and wellness planner, I was able to figure out what were the most vital, valuable aspects of my health that I wanted to track. One of the biggest takeaways I had from using the weekly planner was that it was very difficult for me to notice overarching trends when I was tracking things like my sleep and my mood week after week. So let's say my planner was able to reveal that I didn't have very good sleep on Friday, but made up for it on Saturday. That in and of itself wasn't that insightful compared to if I had a much more zoomed out system where I was able to see if my sleep would be bad during, let's say, when I'm experiencing PMS symptoms, or whether there was any correlation with the start of semesters. As a university lecturer, it's not unusual for me to get a little bit of jitters before the start of any new teaching term. And so usually the days leading up to my very first lecture, it wouldn't be unusual for me to have a bit of anxiety-induced insomnia. And in the past, I've also noticed that my sleep can be disrupted during transitional seasons, such as spring and autumn, when I'm adjusting to the fact that it is getting either a lot hotter or a lot cooler at nights, respectively. So having a yearly spread to track my health and wellness made so much more sense to me as a tool for me to see wider patterns and understand how I can best nurture my needs. So the things that I've decided to track in my spread is menstruation, sleep, energy, mood, illness, migraines, pain, And specifically here, I'm referring to musculoskeletal pain because I used to experience lower back pain quite regularly as someone who leads quite a sedentary lifestyle and spends a lot of time hunched over my computer writing journal articles or editing YouTube videos. So I want to keep an eye on my back pain in my health and wellness tracker. I also track my anxiety and my CPTSD symptoms, which I developed after an intensive case of workplace bullying 6 years ago. I've been using my Artix acrylic markers, which I find has been one of the best tools for Tomoe River paper because there is absolutely zero bleed through and pretty much minimal ghosting. And when I've made mistakes, such as accidentally coloring in the wrong box, acrylic markers are so forgiving because once the first layer dries, I can just color in the square on top and it almost covers it perfectly, just like acrylic paints would. I am already feeling the benefits of keeping this tracker system for my health and noticing when my mood has been dipping a little bit throughout the month. And I hope that through the process of keeping this health and wellness tracker over the course of the year, I will get better at anticipating what my self care needs are. My monthly spreads have been, for lack of a better descriptor, a place where I'm able to practice living more intentionally. Here in my Hobonichi cousin, we got the bonus month of December before January began, and I used that as an opportunity to test out what the system would look like. When I moved into this journal, one of the things that I did with this graph paper template in the back of the book is to map out something called a strategic life portfolio. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll make sure to link to the video in which I explain this system, working out the strategic life units that need greater attention and energy. So I identified that I had many aspects in my life that I wanted to pour more into. Specifically, I wanted to deepen my connections to my friends, my parents, and it was also at the end of 2025, around the time that I was doing this strategic life portfolio exercise, that I was experiencing quite a lot of shoulder and neck pain. And I was seeing a massage therapist quite regularly for it, but often feeling so locked up, so tight in my neck and my shoulders that it also prompted me to think more seriously about how, yes, I might be taking walks very regularly, but I wondered if bringing in a more regular yoga practice would enable me to have more full body exercise that could address the pain that I was experiencing as someone who spends a lot of time in front of a computer. So I decided to use this little margin at the bottom to track the habits that I would like to introduce. So I don't do a big comprehensive habits list, not least of all because there's no space down here to do more than 4 things. But also, what I learned through my health and wellness Hobonichi weeks is that I don't find it very useful to go in and color in dots day by day of, yes, I floss my teeth. Yes, I brush my teeth. There's a reason why they're habits because they're automatic and there's no need for me to track them day in and day out for the sake of having a box to color in. So instead, what I want to do is to track the habits that are wobbly and new. So I began tracking the days that I did a yoga routine. And also because I identified connections with friends and parents meant a lot to me, but I wasn't giving that a lot of my energy. I tracked when I reached out and messaged an old friend I haven't connected with for a while, and also the times when I video called my parents. That's what these trackers down at the bottom helped me to do starting in December 2025. But here we're to talk about January. And I'm happy to say that it's been going really strong. And you can see where the yoga habit is a little bit wobbly. I miss 2 days, I forget about things. But then slowly, bit by bit, it becomes more automatic, more entrenched, and part of my nightly routine. Then what else I did was I took the different domains of my life, like work, relationships, hobbies, and health, and I assigned a different color to them. And I would note down the primary activities of each day. So in January, when we took our Disney cruise, this is where I've marked down our family vacation in pink for relationships, right? I wasn't working on those days, so I wouldn't be marking down career as a domain of my life that I was giving any attention or thought to, thank goodness. But when I came back to work and I got back into the swing of writing every day and meeting with prospective collaborators to discuss new research projects, I began to mark out those days with yellow. And then the days where I play in my journals and swatch inks and film YouTube videos, I mark in this purple. And what this helps me do is at a quick glance, I can see where I have been spending most of my time and energy, and it helps me identify gaps. So if I knew that relationships were important to me, but there was a dearth of pink in certain weeks, then it would guide me to recognizing that, hey, maybe next week I'll challenge myself to call a different friend every day of the week. Or if I'm really busy, message someone I haven't spoken to in a while and let them know how much I miss them. Something that I developed in my 2024 cousin was that at the end of every month, I would use this left hand margin to write something that I was celebrating, something I was learning, something I was releasing or letting go of in my life, something I was welcoming instead, and then something that I was inspired by. And here, while I was filling a lot of this out in the last week of January, I saved the very last prompt for early February when I can look back and properly take stock of what I was inspired by. And I think I'm going to go and fill that in now. So, in case you're curious, I wrote that I was inspired by the laughter of my son and the precious moments where I recognize we are creating memories that we will treasure for a lifetime. I couldn't help but print out and stick in 2 sticker photos from the very day that we embarked on our Disney cruise. And I think the excitement is something that radiates out of these 2 images. So they immediately seize my attention when I flip to this page in reminding me what so much of January was about for us. And also, we were at the supermarket about a week ago, and my son ran over to me in the aisle and he's like, Mom, I have something to tell you. And he was whispering. So I crouched down next to him and gave him my ear, and he whispered into my ear, I found Hello Kitty stickers. And I was like, Really? Where? And he held my hand and took me to the part of the aisle that he was browsing. And indeed, in the stationery section, there was a packet of Hello Kitty stickers. And he asked me if I would buy it for him. And I said, Of course. We came home and we spent some time journaling together. And he asked me if he could be allowed to stick one of his new stickers into my book. And I said, Could you put it in that corner for me, please? And so he actually plonked this one down there. I'm thinking before too long, Tiny Tiger Collective might end up being a shared channel between he and I. So let's see how that goes. So let's get to the weeklies. If you watched my 2026 Techa Kaigi video, then you would know that one of my ambitious goals for these weekly spreads is at a complete loss for what else to do with these pages. I decided to turn them into a joyful memory keeper. And in particular, I was enchanted by Mari Hiraya's videos in which she shares her practice of sticker journaling. Her TNs and Hobonichis are some of the most awe-inspiring pages I have seen in terms of pure, unadulterated stationary love. And I'm somebody who really has a bad habit of purchasing beautiful stickers, but then deciding that they're too precious for me to use on my silly little entries, and then denying myself the pleasure of using the stickers that I bought. So I thought this is going to be such a challenge in self love to let myself use the supplies that I have and sitting with the feelings that I'm wasting my supplies or that I'm not good enough and not deserving of my supplies. Mari Hiraya, as the original creator of such an approach, at least the one who inspired me, hers is so much more maximalist and, dare I say, skillful than mine. But I wanted to give myself a bit of a gentle assignment just to see if I could keep it up or whether I would run into pitfalls, such as realizing that this takes too much time, it's too laborious, or even that I end up using an entire sticker sheet for 1 week and putting myself in a position that I don't want to be, where I have to go out and buy $20 worth of stickers every single week just to keep up with this practice. So I thought, let me just give it a go in my own way. Doesn't have to be perfect, and see how it looks, see how it feels. And I am so happy to say that it is one of the most successful experiments I've had in this journal. And I feel so privileged to have seen Mari's videos and to have followed in her steps to create a practice that has become so nourishing and healing for me. In my old Hobonichi cousin, I put a lot of pressure on myself in the weekly spreads to detail accurate and beautiful time block schedules. Then my problem became what happened when appointments were cancelled. What happened when I initially planned to, say, work on something for 3 hours, but finished it in two? What if someone knocked on my door at my office and we had an impromptu 1 hour meeting, but I didn't have any space to fill it in my schedule? It ended up becoming something that was like a chore to fill out. So I knew I wanted to do something much, much lower pressure for my 2026 cousin. And I've found this a really easy way in which I note down the key highlights of what I got up to when I've had breakfast in bed or went out with my husband for lunch, when I had some journaling in the evenings, or did a bedtime yoga routine before I turned in for the night. I'm never that fussy about getting the exact time allocation and block correct. I just note it down and then I take the stickers that I have collected over the last 3 years, including several that I picked up from Japan, and then I go and decorate to my heart's content. It doesn't look perfect, but it is to me like sticker therapy to work in these spreads. And I will generally wait 3 or 4 days or even a full week, and then I'll come back in, open up my digital calendar and work schedule, maybe checking through my photos on my phone, and then noting down the key highlights of each day, especially the key events that I want to remember. And then I'll go crazy with my stickers, and it just makes me so happy. I will say there is a little bit of a blank spot on my pages, and I wish I wasn't like this, but I am. And these are the days, mostly, where we were on our Disney cruise. And when I got to these pages, of course, I had no time to journal while I was on the cruise itself. So this was always going to be a backfilling exercise for me. But I decided that it would be so fitting to have little Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse stickers for these days. But for the life of me, I can't find Disney stickers of this size or this kind of style at all. They are usually really, really big stickers, or they might be tiny little icon stickers. And I just can't find the right style, the right shape, the right size. And so these are currently blank, which is so incredibly silly. And at the minimum, I think I need to fill in what activities we got up to before I completely forget. And then if I can't find the perfect Disney stickers, I will just have to make do with any number of gorgeous stickers that I already own. One thing that I've loved using my weekly sections for is media logging. I did this for my first ever cousin, and it was one of the most successful exercises of that book. So every week in this left hand margin, I write down all the books that I've been reading. Once I started work in this week, I began tracking the literatures that I'm researching. Then I note down what I've been watching. I watch a lot of YouTube, though I will say I don't write down every single video that I watch, particularly if it's a one off. But if I spent that week, for example, being completely enamored with a particular channel, and I found myself binging 3 or 4 videos over the course of a few days, then I will note down that channel here in this section. So that week, I was really into FD Signifier and his incredibly thoughtful video essays. So I noted him really shaped that week of watching, thinking, consuming for me. And then I also note down what I've been listening to. Now, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I keep that under reading strictly. And listening would be the albums or songs that I have on repeat, or it might be the podcasts that I've been listening to. So, for example, this week I remembered how much I love Doo-Wop by Lauryn Hill, and I was having that song almost on complete repeat every evening. It was like I finished dinner and I'm like, yep, pop on Lauryn Hill. Overall, January has been a really intensive reading month for me. If you've watched my videos before, you might know that I challenge myself to read 100 books and have done so in 2024 and 2025. And I've decided to set myself the same target for 2026. A lot of that is possible, even as a full time academic and mum, because I listen to audiobooks. Out of the 100 books that I read, maybe around 80 or 75 would be audiobooks. So 2025 would be physical books that I read. And I am a big fan of my library. So virtually all of them are books that I borrow, not books that I buy. My 100 spread in the back pages of my Hobonichi cousin is where I am writing down my 100 books of the year. By the end of January, I had read 17 books. I don't even know what's going on with me. That might be a new personal best. I have to review my Storygraph statistics to tell you for sure. But I just became completely entranced with nonfiction during the month of January. I think it was starting with the very second book I read was a memoir of a junior doctor called This Is Going to Hurt. And I found it so fascinating that I followed that up with another memoir, Educated by Tara Westover. I did take a break with a wonderful novel, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. But then I got much back into the swing of my nonfiction when I read Brown Girl Like Me, and then pretty much completely stuck to nonfiction until Catabasis by R.F. Kuang took over my life for about 3 days when I devoured that novel. As we approached the Australia Day, or otherwise known as Invasion Day, Survival Day public holiday here in Australia, I felt curious to read more Indigenous authors. And so I read Is That You, Ruthie? Dark Emu, Sand Talk, and then into the first days of February, I read Right Story, Wrong Story. And that was intellectually very nourishing for me to do that. Nonfiction tend to be a lot shorter than novels. And so I think that might be part of the reason why I was able to burn through 17 books in January alone. But there was also a part of me, maybe it was my holiday, but my mind was hungry. And these books certainly went a long way to fulfilling that hunger. If I may share my highlights, I would say my favorite books of January were Dark Emu and Sand Talk. And I'll include the details for them in the description. I would absolutely not recommend Why We Sleep. If you're fascinated by the science of sleep, maybe it's the book for you. But I found that book really catastrophic in the sweeping conclusions that it draws about the devastating effects of poor sleep. And because I read that book, I had about 3 days of sleep anxiety that caused extreme insomnia right after finishing that book. So if you want to sleep well, I wouldn't recommend reading that book. I love media logging in my journals because it's so illuminating to flip back and see the sorts of things that were capturing my attention, my imagination during that time. It's not unusual for me to spend a couple of weeks listening to an album on repeat and then completely forgetting that artist exists until months later. So being able to flip back and remembering, oh yeah, I did go through a period where I binge watched Catherine Ann Chiang's book reviews on YouTube and read all those novels based on her recommendations. I wonder what she's been up to. And I might go back and figure out, oh, she's got a few new recommendations that I can follow. I really enjoy following the threads of my interests throughout the course of a year. And now that brings me to the daily pages. One of the things that I've been having a lot of fun with is I've challenged myself in my Hobonichi cousin this year to match my ink collection with the color of the month in these books. So if you're a Hobonichi user, you would be well aware that Hobonichi designates a different color to every month of the year. In their 2026 launch that was released at the end of 25, they did feature a collaboration with a gel pen manufacturer in which they matched their existing color line with each of the 12-month colors. I really want to have the opportunity to broaden my ink horizons and education. So, what I've been doing is going through my collection of full ink bottles as well as samples I've been generously gifted by my stationery friends and pen pals. And I am looking for ways to match the particular color, or more accurately, complement the particular color, as a vehicle for trying different inks and using more of my fountain pens. I admit I'm a creature of habit. So when I find one ink that pairs well with one pen, I have a habit of just using that forever and not realizing all the other colors, all the other inks that would be beautiful in that pen, and also getting to know that pen better, figuring out does it work best with wet inks? Can it handle shimmer, dry inks, sheening inks? And I'm embarrassed to admit that I have bought full bottles of ink many years ago, and I've never inked up a single one of my pens with those inks. It's like I'm starting an ink museum and I'm not allowed to actually touch them. It's really fun to go through my collection and pick out the inks for January that match this rust red orangey brick color. And I settled on Dominant Industry and Wonder Pen's collaboration Ginger Chicken, which I inked up in my Pilot Custom 823. Because my sample wouldn't last the whole month, I then inked up Sailor Tea Time Afternoon Tea in my TWSBI Diamond 580. And that was very interesting because it's a very, very wet ink. And I never appreciated how wet my Diamond 580 is. And so that writing absolutely just dumped ink on the page. And my writing was perhaps more like a medium than a fine. And then I rounded out the month inking Diamine Ancient Copper in my Lamy 2000. And I confess that one has been a little bit of a struggle because I think that ink is too dry for my pen. And so the hard starts and the skips in the first 5 days of using that pen almost made me want to throw my pen out the window. Though somehow, as if by magic, after the 5 days, it started flowing much better. And so these are the sorts of quirks about my pens and my inks that I don't get to learn when I stick with the one combination over and over again. Actually, I started having a bit of fun with ink matching in December. So I know it's not December 2026, but because my Hobonichi cousin provided a couple of spreads from December 2025, and Hobonichi colors stay the same year after year, I tried out the Sailor Tea Time Christmas tea, which is a slightly redder red than the orangey red of January. And I used this particular ink on all the previous spreads that I shared, such as this monthly page. And just to be cute, the first 3 days of my weeklies was using Sailor Christmas tea before I switched to ginger chicken on the 1st of January. I just love having fun with my inks and pens in this way. If you'd like a small preview, I can share that February I'm using Robert Oster's Toffee in my Asvine C80, which is an exquisite match. It is a challenge to keep up with the much larger pages of my Hobonichi cousin, but despite the slow start I had to the year when I had no time to journal on my cruise, I've nevertheless, I think, made a really good effort in backfilling a lot of these pages and using these spaces to delve deeper into my thoughts and emotions, as well as share snippets of my life from outside my role as a mother, which is constantly growing as my son becomes more and more independent. One of the things that I have adored the most about my daily pages is how I start every single day with this structured prompt list on the left-hand column. I will shuffle my tarot deck and pull a card for each day that I use as a guiding message to help draw my attention to the places of my life and my mind that I've been neglecting. And I will note that interpretation down under Oracle. Sometimes I come up with a couple of journaling prompts for that particular card. And if I run out of daily activities and events to write about, I will answer that prompt. Then I write down my intention for the day. And this is a self-love practice where, knowing my tendency to try to do everything and anything and then beat myself up when I inevitably don't achieve those impossible tasks, I use this prompt of intention to write down the one, maybe maximum 2 things that I want to spend my time and attention on that day. Then I have 3 really nourishing intentional prompts in which I write one way that I want to care for my body, my mind, and my heart. So on this day, for example, the way I recognize that I could care for my body is to do a bedtime yoga routine before turning in for the night. In terms of my mind, I said I wanted to take the time to journal during August's snap and make the most of my alone time. And then here on the heart, I said I wanted to watch Disney cruising videos and also savor the photographs and memories from our cruise and cuddle my tigers. So, surprise, there's 2 tigers. There's my son, who's the tiny tiger, and my husband's also born in the year of the tiger. So, he's my big tiger. And then every day, this is by far my favorite part of my whole cousin, is I write one point of wonder. And that might be something that I'm grateful for or something that has captured my heart and given me a sense of awe or the sublime. Knowing that I'm going to write something that has enchanted me every day, it has enabled me to move through the world at a slower pace than I'm used to, where I do take the time to notice the baby black swan on my walk or follow a beautiful butterfly as I was weeding my garden. These pages have been such a sacred space for me to decompress and pour into myself in amidst very busy work and family commitments. I am so grateful to have this book, to have both my books in this season of my life, where I do have the privilege to really savor all of my many blessings. I would love to know how January went for you in your life, and how have you found spending time with your books and planners at the start of the year? If you have any books to recommend me, I am always happy to hear about the writings that have captured your attentions. Thank you so much for joining me today in this traipse through my January and a lovely beginning of the year. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Take good care until then, and bye-bye.